Hello, welcome to our fourth week of webinars, Women in the Law UK. You all look fabulous. My name is Sally Penny. You can see from the banners behind me. I'm the founder and CEO of Women in the Law UK, and I host these weekly. So over to you, Adriana.
So, hello everybody. I have been around since 1996. The first Law Society event in Manchester was, I think, June 1996. So basically what that means is that at that time I was very much looking at helping solicitors to deal with the soft skills that are needed, which are beyond the black letter law, but actually are so crucial, both to how people are communicated with, how what needs to be understood is actually understood, but also how you look after yourselves as professionals in what can quite often be a really challenging way of working. And I have since created a collaborative law service, and yes, we are in Hale. We've just opened actually in Alderley Edge. So we opened in Alderley Edge and we closed 2 weeks ago, and we're online now. We also have a link into London and a link into Derbyshire. So small, bespoke, but very much catered to the whole family. And that's, I think, why Sally wanted me to have a bit of a reflective spot today, because what does this mean for families, for our clients' families, as we go into lockdown? Now, yes, I'm sitting in sunny Mallorca, and I made a decision over a weekend a few weeks ago. I'd heard that the government was just about to lock down in Spain on the 14th of March, and we had literally just closed the Alderley office on the day before, the Friday the 13th. And I just thought to myself, do you know what? Given my pre-existing health conditions, I'm not so sure I should be here. So by the 16th, I was on a plane and I'm here and able to work. And actually, I think it's been a very good move, because I also see individual clients, and we have gone online. Yeah, it's really important that, and the reason I think it's important that I'm where I am, the reason I think it's important is the same for all of you. That actually you need an emotional space. You need emotional time to replenish. And when you're in the centre of something, that's really hard to do. So I want you to think about, if you can, how do you give yourselves now, in this lockdown period, the emotional space and time that you actually need? Yeah. And if we're talking about families, we're talking about parents, we're talking about, grandparents, that sort of thing. How do you do that when actually everybody is isolated? Equally, how do you do that when you might have children who are 2.5, 3.5, 5.5, running about at home, and you're supposed to be working? And, you might both be at home, but in their mind, the moment you get home, they are expecting you to be available. And what does that mean for them? And what's the implications of how you manage that, or how you might not manage that mean for them? So we're going to look at some of these things. I'm sure that you will have your own thoughts. If anything comes up at the time, just jot down a quick note, quick word, and then when we get to the question and answers, and I want it to be more question and answers than me chatting, then we can all share from each other's experiences, and we can gain from that. Okay, so we've had the first week, 10 days of everybody beginning to work from home, everybody getting themselves organised, ready, sorted. All the practical things are now in place. And now this is the new normal. And I don't know how long that's going to last for, but I think there's something about the mindset that you need to develop for yourselves, both as practitioners and professionals in whatever fields you're in, and also as partners, sons, daughters, all of that sort of thing. Well, it's daughters here, isn't it? Mothers, for some of you. But I think there's something really important, which is that once you've done the busyness of getting yourself ready, then what next? Some of you may well be in relationships where effectively you're having to negotiate. Now, how do you negotiate time away from each other in this space? And you do need that time away. So how do you do that? What, can you and have you actually have the discussion about, I'm actually going to need an hour every day, or I'm going to need 45 minutes every day of not doing anything apart from the things that are really important to me. And actually, I want to do them on my own. Yeah? So it might be walking the dog if you're lucky enough to have one at this point. It might be it might be that you go for a run, or you just want to go for a walk on your own. Or it might be that you want to curl up with a book or listen to some music or whatever, and you do not want to be disturbed. I think it's not so much what you say to your partner or to your children, it's maybe how you're going to say it. So I encourage people to think about it as if you're going to say something, you want to get into the other person's way of thinking. So it might well be useful, as a useful tip, to remind people of what's important to them. So actually, if you've got a 9-year-old who likes to be in his or her room for a period of time whilst they're doing their own thing, just to, all this, just remind yourselves and remind them, well, actually, you have that time. It's really important to you. It's equally important for me, your dad, whoever it is, your stepdad, whatever, if you're in a partnership, that we get that time, and we're going to divide it up. Most of you, if you have children, will also remember using a sort of star system. Do you remember using a star system? If you're really good, you get that many stars, or if you clean your bedroom, you get this or whatever. Do you know what? It's so amazing. A few years ago, I was learning how to play the cello, and I thought of this star system, and I would have it up on my calendar in my kitchen. And I would choose, depending upon how much practice I had done that day, whether or not it was going to be a big star or a little star, or what colour I was going to give myself, and all of that sort of thing. Now you can make these. You can actually draw them on. Yeah, you don't have to go out and be looking for stuff. But again, these are the sorts of things that when you feel that you've done something well, and when each of your family members feels, oh, that's been good. And these are the sorts of things that you can use as a family, or you just heard me say it, I was doing it for myself, not for anybody else. You can use it as a sort of chart, as a monitor. And you need these chart, I think we need these chart type environments, just to remind us of what we have done, just to reinforce the positives when we're actually out of what we consider to be our normal routine. And reinforcing the positives is so important. It's really resilience building. I'm going to talk a little bit about, and I mean a little bit, about what goes on in the brain. Because I think if we can just say a little bit about this, it can sometimes help people to get a handle on what might be happening for them and what might be happening for other people in their families. So this is a time of some level of anxiety, and that level depends on, you know, where you are in terms of your relationship with anxiety. I have quite a number of people who I'm seeing individually who, as a psychologist, who already had some levels of anxiety. Interestingly, that when the real anxiety comes, they get better. Not all of them, but some of them, because they've got something real to focus on, as opposed to what's going on in our heads and other worries that maybe they can make an assessment about now. However, anxiety in some ways can change how our brains function. We have a little thing at the back of, oh my goodness, let me get hold of this hair. We have a little thing right here, right at the back of the brain, really tucked in to our skull. And it's a tiny, 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 tiny organ, really. Well, is it an organ? Part of the brain. It's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is something that we hadn't really understood, probably until magnetic resonance imaging came about. And when magnetic resonance imaging came about, people were able to see that this thing, which we actually thought was a bit like an appendix, i.e. some old part of the brain that didn't function anymore, was functioning very well, thank you very much. And they worked out, okay, Kate, are you okay? Sally, can you pick up? Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Don't worry, just ignore that.
That's fine. All right, that's fine. Okay, so what we found was that the amygdala is the part of the brain that registers threat. It also registers our emotions. So it's right next to our short and our long-term memory. And every piece of information that comes into us goes first through the amygdala. If the amygdala decides that actually, so it goes to the amygdala is quite quiet, then we'll get a piece of information through. If it's not something that is within its normal range, i.e. something it's dealt with before, it'll go to the filing system, our short and long-term memory, and go, okay, have we got anything that shows us what we're, how to deal with this situation? And crucially, is this situation potentially threatening to us? So when the amygdala gets in action, it's making an assessment about our safety. There are a lot of amygdalas in action at this moment in time. And one way of quietening our amygdala is actually to breathe. So, what do I mean by that? Okay, so to quieten the amygdala is really important, because when the amygdala comes back down from being on alert, it enables you to actually work better with what we call the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is into complex thinking. Yeah. And complex thinking is really quite important. It's where we get into our creativity. It's where we can actually analyse things at a different level from purely being fearful. The amygdala, if we can calm it down, is going to reduce our fear responses. Yeah? And one of the ways I want you to think about doing that is actually breathing. I want you to think of the last young person, really young person, that you saw asleep. So it might be, a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old child. And actually look at, can you remember what their bodies actually did when they were asleep? For some of you, you'll remember that actually their little chests went up and their little tummies would come out as they were breathing. So the whole from sort of here to down right into their tummy, you would find that everything would extend and then it would relax again and go back in, and then it would extend all the way down. If you think about it, we don't do that. They actually know how to breathe naturally. We somehow have managed to forget how to breathe. And what's really interesting is that if we can remind ourselves of how to breathe in a way that is slow but deliberate, and actually extends both our chest area, which means that the muscles have to be relaxed around our ribs, and enables the diaphragm to go down so that the actual lung capacity is extended to its fullest extent. And we do that for some time. It might be a minute or so. It might be a little bit longer sometimes, depending upon the situation. What we're actually doing is we're telling the amygdala, yeah, we can see there's a problem, but actually all is okay. Now, there's a reason for doing that. Because if you can actually quieten the amygdala, you then get into the more complex form of thought process. In other words, you can deal with things that maybe are anxiety provoking, or you can deal with things that maybe are quite fear-inducing in a way that actually leaves you more in control. And I think at this point in time, when people are living on top of each other, or the other side of it is that people are living completely alone, completely isolated, actually the use of the amygdala and the control that you can actually garner by actually keeping the amygdala in check is something that I'd like you to consider and maybe even try for yourselves. It's not something that will come naturally. It's actually the reverse of that. But what we're really talking about is helping to create some equilibrium within our nervous system. And if you can do it for yourself and practice it on yourself, you can actually try to suggest it for other people in your family as well, and see how it goes for them.
Thank you all. I suppose the final plug is my podcast this month is Gina Miller. It's a great interview. If you've got any time at all, listen to it. And that's about it, really. Adrienne, thank you. So lovely to see you from Spain.
Yeah, good to see you too, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye and take care. Bye.